fake it till you make it. Hide it till you find it. I know you heard those sayings before. Man, we want to welcome you to He Said.
She said.
It's on today. Listen, right out the gate, we want to hit you with our sponsors. We want to thank the People's Church for sponsoring today's program.
Thank y'all, thank y'all,
Thank y'all. We thank you and we love you. Man, it's crazy because today, babe, we're going to talk about it's okay to not be okay.
Absolutely. It honestly is okay to not be okay.
It's real, everybody. Right out the gate, we were thinking about being okay and not being okay at the same time. For us, we have heard a lot of people try to hide their problems, hide their real feelings. And now you ever heard somebody say, I'm feeling some type of way? Well, we want to expose that today because we know firsthand what it's like not to be okay. How you feel about it?
I think that this is probably one of the best topics, something that is not being addressed anywhere across the world, especially in church and in our society.
Absolutely.
Is basically you cover it up, you find some type of coping mechanism or some type of something to cover up the way you're feeling or what you're going through. And I think that sometimes it's okay to say, like, I'm not feeling it today. I mean, today is not a good day. And I think we have learned to hide what we're feeling.
Absolutely. Even in the media, you'll hear about someone just out of the blue passing away or committing suicide or some type of drug, having to be admitted to some type of rehab. And right away, we're saying, what happened to him? What happened to her? For us, we say, man, we thought that everything was okay.
That's right.
But when the lights go off,
that's right.
When there's no crowd, the real you comes out, especially if you got a title or if you got some type of high position.
Absolutely. And I think even in seeing people that we've known before, or let's say you have pastors or ministers that commit suicide, or you find themselves they find themselves falling away or something of that sort. You wonder what happened, but it's because all this time they've portrayed that everything was okay. They put this persona, up and made it seem as though everything was okay when really it wasn't. And then behind the scenes, they have a drug addiction, some type of sexual addiction, some type of something, to where they were hiding it and nobody ever knew. So you were right when you said that we would say we thought everything was okay because that's the way they portrayed it to be.
I agree with you. Even in the black home, the African American home, it's almost like a stigma to talk about depression or needed some type of psychiatric help, things of those nature. What do you feel about some type of counseling, or should there be counseling, some type of grief recovery, especially even in a black home?
Listen, growing up, I didn't think that.
Right.
Growing up, I didn't think. I thought that you had to really have something wrong mentally,
Right.
For you to go and see a counselor.
Right.
It was that the problems weren't actually that bad.
Right.
When you went to see a counselor, it wasn't until I lost my family members and I found myself needing to see a counselor.
Now you're a first lady.
Absolutely.
You're a first lady. For those
First
of you who
lady.
don't know, she's a first lady. All right, first ladies, they don't have problems. All right, they're perfect.
Who said?
They're grand.
Who said?
They just wave and smile. That's all they do. Sit on the front row with the long skirt and tennis shoes on. That's all. That's all they do. But you're a first lady, and you lost your grandmother, you lost your sister, and you lost your cousin, all within a matter of months.
Absolutely.
How did you cope with that?
I actually found myself at a counselor. And
you went to counseling?
I went to counseling.
Now, first ladies don't go to counseling. You went to counseling.
I went to counseling. I found myself at a counselor. Not only did I find myself at a counselor, but I found myself feeling like I was depressed.
Wow.
First lady and all, found myself feeling like I was depressed.
Right.
Why? Because even though I was a first lady, I tried to tend to the needs of other people and as in our society and cover up how I actually felt, which meant that I didn't tend or grieve properly the way that I should have grieved so that I could help somebody else. I went on and truth be told, in my position, the people didn't care. that I had just lost
Wow.
loved ones or how I was feeling. As long as I stood up there on Sundays and I hugged,
Right.
and as long as I answered that phone when they called,
Right.
they didn't care that First Lady might have felt some type of way. And so let's say forget First Lady. I am still Nakia
Right.
outside
And a
of
lot of
being
times people
First Lady.
forget
They
that.
forget that.
They forget that.
Absolutely.
So how did you deal, even as a Christian? Did you have some type of dichotomy within you saying, okay, I'm a Christian. I'm not supposed to have these feelings. I'm not supposed to be depressed. I'm not supposed to go through this. How did you feel? Was there a struggle for you on?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I always found myself toiling with the word of God because I'm like, God, your word says this. Well, why do I feel like this?
Right.
Your word says this. Well, why do I feel like this? And it's because, I know the word of God. I
Right.
love the word of God, and
Right.
and I found comfort in it.
Right.
I even found comfort in being in ministry or working
But your
in
feelings were
ministry.
real.
But my feelings were real.
Wow.
So even in the midnight hour when everybody was gone and it
Right.
seemed like I had a chance to sit down and relax my mind, because that's where the enemy begins to play it from
Wow.
first and foremost, is in your mind.
Hmm.
So when I got to sit back and think about it in my mind, then it's like, oh, okay, so you do feel this and
Right.
you do feel that, and then when I get up in the morning, I'm like, Lord, it's brand new mercies, brand new things happening today.
Right.
So how I felt last night and how I felt on yesterday don't matter, because this is a new
Wow.
day to be able to do something different.
What do you say to the person though that's watching, that may be watching, that says, I'm a Christian, I love God, but my feelings are real. I can't talk to anybody about it. They're gonna look at me bad, whether I'm in a church or even where I work at. A lot of people are supervisors and they have
Absolutely.
positions, so they have to keep going, even though they have these feelings and they feel like they might get ready to break down.
Well, I would say if you feel like you don't have anybody in your family that you could talk to, somebody at your job that you could talk to, I would say you probably need to seek out counseling.
Wow.
You need to go and see somebody. There's nothing wrong
So
with
you're
it.
not crazy if you go to
You're not
counseling.
crazy if you
Because
go
that's
to
what we were
counseling.
told. We're told
We
you
were
are
told
crazy.
that.
You're
Absolutely.
you're almost nuts if you go to counseling.
Absolutely,
So
and
it's okay
that's
to go to
wrong.
counseling.
It's okay to not be okay.
It's okay to
It's
not be okay.
okay to not be okay. And I think now that we have found that truth,
Hmm.
and sharing that truth with other people, even in your marriage, not even so much as grieving over a loved one, from your marriage to your children. Sometimes you might need family counseling. You
Right.
might need some type of, help for somebody to step in your job, could be stressful. You could use counseling in a lot of different areas. It doesn't have to be in just that area.
Even along those veins, you talk about the children and the children needing counseling. I think about the many funerals that you and I do, right?
Absolutely.
Most of you know that when a young person passes away in Indianapolis, a lot of times we're the pastors that they call, right?
Absolutely.
Maybe it's because we have some type of connection with them. We know a bunch of the kids growing up. But even when a child passes away, or children dealing with grief, a lot of times it's almost overlooked. You'll see the children at the funeral. They'll be
Yes.
crying.
Yes.
They're mourning, even as
Yes.
children. But then Monday morning they go to school, and it's
Absolutely.
just almost like it's in the back of their mind. Let's forget about it. Go on to school. Go on to sports, not knowing that that child
Was
is
affected
that was
too.
affected just as much, if
Absolutely.
not
If not
more,
more.
than the adults. Jesus
Absolutely.
said, "Man, suffer these little children to come unto me. Receive, if you're going to receive me like a child." And I think children's hearts are so big that sometimes we forget that they are hugely affected by what's going on as well, as far
Absolutely.
as grief.
I
So you
agree.
say not just counseling for you or I as
Yes.
the adult, but what about
Yes.
the children going to counseling? Because the,
Yes.
the first thing they'll say to us is the kids are acting out, or we don't know what's wrong. Well, she just changed overnight, or he just changed overnight. No, he didn't just change. Somebody
Absolutely.
passed away, and nobody
Absolutely.
ministered to that grief that the
Absolutely.
child was feeling.
Well, that's because if you've never been taught to deal with it yourself, then how
Mm,
can you even help somebody else deal with
wow.
anything, especially a child? Because if you come from the old school, then that means that child, you do as I say,
Right.
not as
Not as
I
I
do,
do.
and you don't talk back, and
Right.
you listen to what I'm saying,
Right.
and you respect your elders.
Right.
But then what about now this society of being able to listen to your child or being able to hear what they have to say instead of
Wow.
treating them as if they're a step stool
Right.
and not so much as listening to what they have to say.
You know, I'm to be transparent. If you don't know us, man, we're probably two of the most transparent people that you'll probably meet. But to be transparent, I remember feeling uncomfortable when our children would ask about our loved ones who had passed away. Right? You'll be sitting down having a good day, watching TV or eating some cereal. I don't know what y'all do in y'all house, but you'll be sitting down, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the child would say something like one of our kids would say, "Well, is Auntie so and so in heaven?" Or, I don't like that. One of our Elijah will say, "I don't like that song because that song reminds
Yes.
me," and immediately I change the subject. Like the subject has to change right away. Or you might say, "Boy, go sit down somewhere, go on outside and play," because now what I found that they were doing was they were expressing their
Their
grief,
grief.
they were
Hmm.
expressing their hurt and their concern, but I didn't want to deal with it as an adult. So
Absolutely.
instead of deal with it, I'll cover it up, move on.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about something else.
Well, how about even when you and I had to have a conversation about just going to the gravesite,
Right.
or just
Right.
even reminiscing, sometimes not to be sad, but even to have those
Right.
good memories as well, because a lot of times we would just keep moving,
Right.
as if they weren't a huge part for
That's
over
true.
20 something, 30 something
Right.
years, or however long. And just even in saying, sometimes no, let's stop and take a
Right.
moment to actually talk about this
Absolutely.
because I'm feeling this way and I want to be able to express that I'm feeling this way so that I don't turn to something else, or I don't, try to I don't necessarily want to forget about them,
Right.
but I actually want to remember the good things about them instead of the bad
Was
things.
he said, she said. So I can speak from the male's perspective
Absolutely.
that it is. We were almost taught at an early age not to grieve. At
Absolutely.
an early age, we were told, wipe those tears. Men don't cry.
Yeah.
And even as young boys, we're taught to not have to deal with that. Well, put yourself in my shoes that I love your grandmother. She passed away.
Absolutely.
I had a cousin pass away, and then your
Absolutely.
sister passed away, and then your cousin passed away, and then
And
my
your uncle.
uncle
Yeah,
passed away.
absolutely.
So not only did I not, what was I not able to grieve, but I had to
Absolutely.
preach all the
But
funerals.
yes.
What about the pastor that
Absolutely.
preaches the funerals? When
Yeah.
does he get to grieve? And
Absolutely.
so now I find myself stressing,
Absolutely.
projecting, which
Absolutely.
means that I'm taking all my feelings out on you. You the closest thing to me, and I love you. I promise you, I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
absolutely.
But I'm taking all my feelings out on you. But it's really because I haven't grieved. And then
Absolutely.
all of a sudden, pastoring and all, everybody, all of a sudden, one day, out of nowhere, I just break down crying. I'm
Absolutely.
driving in the truck, and I just break down crying. And I recognize then I need some help. And
Mm-hmm.
so, as a man, you're not really taught to get help. We can do
Absolutely.
it all. We're men. Come
Absolutely.
on, we strong men.
Providers supposed to,
We put it
be a
on our back.
covering,
We
and
put
yeah,
it on our back.
absolutely.
So I didn't know that as a man that I was grieving, and I found that's why we don't judge people. I don't know. I don't judge people because you don't know what a person is going through
You're right.
to have the action or the reaction that you see. You never know. That's on the surface, but on the root there could be some deep rooted pain, some
Absolutely.
deep rooted grief that hasn't been dealt with.
Absolutely. And I can even remember a time when we had to talk to our children.
Hmm.
And even in
It was
talking
tough.
with our children,
That was tough.
you were one of the ones that was, I pay the bills in this
Right.
house. This is my house. You
Right.
do what I say,
But tell them
whatever.
about when because I need you to make me look good.
Okay.
Tell them
Well,
when.
no.
No, tell them. Family, this is a great time for her to say something good about me. Did you hear what I said? I said, I know you're about to say something really good. It had to be about me. Anytime somebody says that, use it to say something good. We'll see what she says right after this.
The perfect church for imperfect people, the People's Church. Join us on Sunday mornings at 11:30 a.m., 2990 West 71st Street. Visit us at tpcindy.org for more information.
Welcome back to He Said,
She said.
She Said. Man, we are in a wonderful discussion about it's okay to not be okay. Before we went to commercial break, we were talking about our personal grief, all the things that we were going through. You were actually getting ready to say something really good about me. I had a feeling you were. Go ahead.
I don't know
What were you getting
about
ready to say?
that part, but I was gonna say, remember when we had to have a come to Jesus moment with our children,
Absolutely.
and it wasn't even so much as with our children; it was with ourselves,
Right.
and
That's real.
because we were talking about how we grew up, you really didn't have, as a child, a say
No, you
in
couldn't
what
say
was
nothing.
going on in
Couldn't
your
say
home.
nothing.
Couldn't listen here, say something. Your
That's
backhand
right.
might have
Your
got
your
you.
your opinion didn't matter
It
when
did
we were
not. It
children.
did not matter.
So how did you feel about that with even
So
with our children?
it wasn't until we took in my cousin after my grandmother passed, and here we are, had 5 children of our own,
Hmm.
now taking in another child who is older than ours, and then
Right.
we found ourselves as parents as of a teenager.
Right.
And being a parent of a teenager, we didn't have a manual. We didn't, have anybody telling us, okay, this is what you should do.
Right.
So what we do, we had to figure it out
Absolutely.
on our own. And one thing that we figured out was that the way we grew up in this new era with the children, it wasn't going to work.
Right.
And especially if you wanted to know what was going
Right.
on with your child, because now they have their friends,
Right.
they have other people that they feel like they can confide in.
Right.
And it could be a while before you even find out what is actually going on with your child.
You know what's amazing to me was I remember as a teenager wanting to have a voice. Then when I became an adult, I
You
was taking
stripped
away
that
the
away.
voice
Yes, absolutely.
from the teenager. And
Absolutely.
so now we had to go back and try to
Absolutely.
redo some things and say we want to hear how you actually feel about it. I think it was just a amazing day in history, everybody. We actually asked the teenager how they felt, and it kind of changed the dynamics of our house.
When I say it changed it, because I can remember, and I can remember having these conversations, and they would say something that would strike that chord of
Right.
yours,
Right.
and it would
Now you're
strike that
smiling,
chord.
but you're really talking about me. You're smiling,
It
and I know
struck
you're
that
talking.
chord.
Every time you
Absolutely.
smile, I know you're about to say something about me.
Uh huh.
Like, yeah, this is about to
Whether
be about
whether
you.
good or
Yeah,
bad,
I knew it was
absolutely.
coming.
So
What happened?
it would strike that chord, and I could remember actually having to tap you,
Yeah, you were tapping.
and I would say, I'm behind the kids trying to tell you,
Yeah.
calm down.
Because I'm from the old school, everybody. I'm from
Absolutely.
the old school. I feel like the adult talk, the child listen.
Absolutely.
I don't want to hear what you got to say. If what you had to say was important, I would have learned it when I was a child. I don't want to hear nothing the kid got to say. And then the teenagers will have a critique of us. And then I definitely don't want to hear
Listen
that.
here.
And so I went into daddy, parent, whatever mode. And I remember you
Drill
tapping me.
sergeant,
Yeah,
Marine.
but it was so needed
Mm-hmm.
that it made me have a internal come to Jesus meeting with
Absolutely.
myself.
Absolutely.
Because if you ever want somebody to really, I think children will be the most honest with you. They don't
Absolutely.
have nothing to lose, nothing to gain. They're not getting a check from you, so to speak. So kids tend to tell the truth, and I had to take an introspective look at what they were saying.
Absolutely. And I think once we done that,
Yeah,
it was, oh shoot, family meeting.
family meeting.
Let's have a
That's
family
right.
meeting all the time,
We was
because
telling everybody,
yes,
get off the
and
game.
they already knew. Come
Come
on,
on,
hey, turn it off.
turn it off.
Hey, put that phone down.
Get to the table.
Yes, come on,
In
let's
the
go.
kitchen.
They talking about, oh,
That's
what we
right.
to
We was like the
now?
Cosbys. Do you hear me? Before the Cosbys. We were the Cosbys, and we pulled everybody in, and we had to deal with the grief around the whole table. So it
Absolutely.
wasn't just you and I's grief, but it was
Absolutely.
even the grief of the children, and we
Absolutely.
had to be able to hear that and minister
Mm-hmm.
that as well. What do you
Absolutely.
say to the parent that may have children that are grieving, but they need to have that uncomfortable conversation with them as well?
Well, first off, I would try to say, uh, if you have a relationship with your child, don't let them just tell you that everything is okay.
Right.
Sometimes it takes actually sitting down and actually, whether it's at taking them out to eat,
Hmm.
or, out doing something with them to be able to get them to feel comfortable with you, to open up, which they should already feel comfortable, but sometimes those are, I mean, it's uncomfortable for us. So what makes us think it's not going to be uncomfortable for them? So I would say sit down, have that conversation with them, and then, not so much as bash them when they're telling you something, because they have feelings too. And if you don't listen, they're going to turn and they're going to tell somebody. And so it would be nice to be able to be that parent that they can come and talk to. Now, I'm not saying go and smoke weed with your child.
Right.
I'm not saying, be your child's friend. What I am saying is be that source for them, that if there is a problem or something, they can come and talk to you. One thing, babe, before I let you speak, one thing I love about my children is anytime something is going on at school, they come home and they say something.
Right.
I mean, whether it's the football coach
Right.
or whether it's another classmate at school, like they come home and say
Right.
something. And sometimes, because your child comes home and say that, school was good, I mean, we didn't do nothing today. I ain't got no homework today. You kind of let that be because you're already so busy,
Right.
quote unquote, anyways.
Right.
And so you kind of just let that fly. But for us, I'm so glad that, they come and they say, you know what? Guess what my teacher said
Right.
today? Or even for our child, they said Black History Month in
Right.
their school. My children go to a school that is a predominantly white school. And so when my son came home, he was like, well, it's Black History Month, and we didn't really do
Right.
anything that pertained to Black
Right.
history, which kind of bothered him. And I was glad that he felt okay
Right.
actually coming home and saying that to us because we want to know how they feel.
Speaking of our son, do you remember when he had the football game and he really didn't have a great football game? Now, I'm a parent. We're parents. I'm the daddy slash coach in the stands. I don't necessarily yell at the coach, but I do want to know what's going on. But do you
Absolutely.
remember the game that he didn't have a really great game after performing well, and got home? And I'm like, Eli, what's going on? Why was your game off today? And he was like, I don't know. It's just like my mind was somewhere else, which was a red flag because someone close to us had just
Had just
passed.
passed.
Do you remember
Absolutely.
that? And
Yes.
you didn't think about it in the
Yes.
moment. I'm thinking that he usually catch all these balls. He usually doing his thing, but someone passed.
Yeah.
He had to go to school
Yeah.
and deal with that or not deal
Absolutely.
with it.
Absolutely.
And then it's in his mind on the football field. So I think
Absolutely.
back to what we were saying about our children or children in general having to deal with grief. It's important that we minister that. Call them out the room. Because a lot of
Absolutely.
times they're in the room with the door shut, they're on
Yep.
the phone with the headphones on.
Yep.
Call them out the room.
Yep.
Because if they're not talking to you,
They're
they're
talking to
talking to
somebody. You're
somebody. And
right.
one thing that we've always done, and this is for all the parents, we use Jedi mind trick on our kids, right? What we'll do is we'll get another parent that they respect outside of our home. We tell that parent what's going on. Now the children, because they will talk to
They
them,
sure
and
will.
you'll sit there like, now wait a minute. They're
Mm-hmm.
saying the same things that we were saying,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so for us, it's like, okay, Jedi mind trick. Talk to those parents, but you're really talking to me, and you don't even know you're
Absolutely.
talking to me, and I'm really
Absolutely.
the cool one in the house, but you don't see it because you was.
Absolutely.
So we use Jedi mind
Absolutely.
tricks.
And
So
so,
go
so
ahead. I'm
what do
sorry.
you think about the show that our daughter Alicia came home
Mm,
and told us to watch,
yeah.
which was very it was very I'm trying to find a word. It was most of the teenagers
Right.
were watching this
It was trending.
show. Yeah, it was very trendy, and she had told us. And we were even getting emails from the
Right.
school. We were getting
Right.
phone calls from the
Right. If
school.
you don't know what show that is, everybody, that show is called 13 Reasons Why.
Yes,
It is a trending Netflix series, and it's very prevalent to suicide, is what it was
absolutely.
about.
Hmm.
A teenager, spoiler alert, a teenager commits suicide in the show. That's what the whole show is about. And then she leaves a series of tapes
Absolutely.
behind, letting people know why they were a part of her decision to commit suicide. It threw us off
Yes,
because our 12-year-old told us to watch the show.
absolutely.
And so, we kind of brushed her off. No, we're not going to watch the show. But then you sat down and actually watched it. So what did you think about when you started watching the show?
When I tell you that I told her, I said, Leisha, put it on Netflix and put it on 13 Reasons Why. When I say, she was like, oh
She was
mommy, oh
excited.
my God, yes.
She was
When I
excited.
laid in the bed, she even crawled up
But she had
beside
watched
me,
the whole
had
thing.
watched the whole thing already, and
Wow.
she was willing to actually sit there and watch it
Wow.
again with me because she felt like it was that good. And then once it started, I'm in the first episode, and she was like, oh, you don't even know
Right.
what's going to
Right.
happen in this. I mean,
Right.
just wait till you see this. And so for me, even though I didn't want to watch the show because it intrigued her or it sparked her interest, I wanted to find out what this
Wow.
show was about, because me as a parent, I want to know what my child is doing or
Right.
what my child is watching. And so when I began to watch the show, I was like, oh my goodness, like she seemed cool.
Right.
Like it seemed like she had a good high school,
Right.
I mean, she made friends
Right.
moving from being, I would say, a military family,
Right.
even though they weren't military. They moved to a different place, and she seemed to fit in very
Right.
well. She seemed to be popular,
Right.
and so it just seemed like everything in her life was okay.
So the show, ultimately, the young lady kills herself. She's a
Absolutely.
teenager. She kills herself. When watching the show, did you have a sense, or did you feel like suicide was almost glorified versus something that was tragic? What was your
Yeah,
take on that?
it actually did, because it made it seem like, well, I couldn't handle this, or this happened. And then it was like, if it wasn't one thing, it was another. And then
Mm,
it was like, whoa, it's me. And then it
mm,
was like, but it made it seem like she didn't have a support system.
right.
It made it seem like everything kept happening to her. But one thing I noticed in the show was that, her parents were involved.
Right.
They were there, but did
Right.
she use them to talk to
Mm,
him? Then also, I noticed there was a counselor,
right.
that was involved, that, before she actually went and done, that she went to talk to. But then I'm like, how much information,
Mm,
did she give to this counselor? And so it almost made it seem like she was invisible,
mm,
and that was okay. When
right.
you give little subtle hints and people don't, catch on to those hints,
Right.
it's almost like it's okay to go ahead and do this, because nobody's caring about you
Right.
anyway. You're just another number, another
Right.
child, in the school, or my parents won't miss me, if I'm gone
Now you
anyways.
say that, but I want you to be transparent to the people at home. When you think of suicide, what's the first thing you think about?
That black people don't do
Black
that.
people don't commit suicide. Yeah,
Absolutely.
the first question I asked was she white? Like,
Yeah.
I just want to know, because coming up the way that I came up, or the way
Yes,
that you came
absolutely.
up, you didn't
Absolutely.
really hear about, or it was almost taboo
Yes.
for people to talk about suicide where we were from. So for us, as a community, even as an African American community, it's important to begin this conversation because we are experiencing it as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then, I mean, can you imagine parents in a time in your life when you were in high school or dealing with
It's
some
true.
things where you might have, thought about committing suicide, or
It's
even,
true.
attempted, to even try to do
Right.
such a thing. And so I just want you to think about that, because whatever age your child is, and whatever age you thought about doing it, you probably need to address that issue with your child right now, and not think that it can't happen to you.
Listen, we've been talking about it's being okay to not be okay. We want to encourage everybody who's watching, maybe you or your family, someone you know close to you, may have thoughts of suicide, may have
Absolutely.
thoughts of depression. We're going to put a
Absolutely.
number on the screen, and we want you to use that number. We want you to access a lifeline for you or your family member, because sometimes you have to know that it's okay
To not
to
be
not be
okay.
okay. He said,
She
she said.
said.